by the league. I'm your host, John Sirianidis, and tonight we are joined by John Capodice, head football coach at Berlin High School down in Berlin, Connecticut, home of the Class M state champions in Connecticut. Coach Capodice, great to see you, my friend. How are you this evening?
Doing well. Thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it. And you guys do a tremendous job over there.
Well, thank you, Coach. I really do appreciate it. And before we get started here, I do want to let our viewers know that we are brought to you by the league. The league is the first spring football league in New England. They're playing 4 games in the month of May. If you're interested in playing in the league, tryouts are currently going on right now on Sundays over at Malden Catholic High School. Visit the elitefootballleague.com for more information. All right, Coach. Obviously, as I mentioned right off the top, of course, a Cinderella season of sorts, a magical season. Your first season back at Berlin High School. You guys win the Class M state championship. Before we go into that, and we're going to talk about that plenty, it was a long journey to get to that point, a journey that's had some ups and some downs. Get us started here by talking about your coaching career and how it all culminated with you ending up back at Berlin.
Well, it was a great opportunity to come back to the school where I played at, and my dad played there, my cousin played there. I had real fortunate to spend the last 10 years at Wesleyan University with their staff. And it was just a great opportunity still working at the high school to come back and lead the program. We had a great group of kids, great group of coaches, and a historic season.
Obviously, you mentioned you were at Wesleyan. Prior to that, you were the head coach at Berlin, of course, your alma mater, where you said you played. You move on from Berlin, you go to Wesleyan University. How much did that experience help you so that when you did go back to Berlin prior to last season, you were able to put it all together and win a state title?
Well, it was tremendous growth. It was a great opportunity to be around great coaches there, led by Dan DeCenzo and his staff. Every day was basically a coaching clinic. You're working with college coaches on a daily basis. So there's so much opportunity for growth. And I was able to bring back so many ideas and things that I learned at Wesleyan into our Berlin High School football program that really helped us achieve this year.
And as I mentioned, you play in Class M, but you guys play a tough, tough schedule. When you got back to Berlin, you knew you had some talent. You knew you had some pieces to work with, especially in your junior and senior classes. How much confidence did you have when you stepped back into the role of being a head coach that, hey, I'm inheriting something here that I can make into a champion?
Well, I wasn't sure because there was a whole new playbook. We had to implement a lot of new programming. I basically call it the cookbook. So I had a bunch of recipes in there. I pulled out the recipes from the past. I knew what worked. I knew the program inside and out, and we had a lot of work to do. And very fortunate that our coaches jumped right in. We had a tremendous senior class, and we really flipped the program quickly to really bring back a lot of those traditions and things that help us, be successful. And we pounded the weight room.
You mentioned the weight room, right? I mean, look, I don't care who it is, where it is. That's the recipe for success. And as you know, Coach, the weight room culture isn't what it used to be, unfortunately. But I do still think it exists, and I do still think that it exists at a high level, depending on your school and where you're at. How were you able to get that buy-in early when you came back last spring to say, "Hey, listen, if we're going to get to where we want to go, it starts in this room, and we go from there"?
Well, the true reason was I already had a relationship with the kids because I was their PE teacher. So I really felt that I could have said, "Let's go play kickball," and they would have followed me. I had a great rapport with the kids, and that was a big, big help in getting them into that weight room and ready to go. They already trusted me. So again, I could have said, "Let's go play kickball," or "Let's go do whatever it might be," and I'm pretty confident they would have came and followed me. And when I said, "Let's get to the weight room and let's get this going," they trusted me and they showed up, and we got right to work.
And you mentioned getting right to work, and you guys did indeed get right to work. When did you know pretty early on that, hey, you know what, as a staff, you guys sensed we have a pretty special group here. We think we can do something with these guys that hasn't been done here in a while?
Well, when we got into that weight room and 55 kids showed up and they were ready to work and our seniors were all in, I said, well, we have a shot here because there's a commitment. Now I just have to instill the discipline, the accountability, and all those things back into the program. And if we do that, we're going to have success. We had to I had to put a brand new staff together. Had to put a playbook together, had to put practice plans together, and everything had to be done at the highest level for us to have success. And it was a tremendous amount of work.
You mentioned having success. Obviously, you had been the head coach there previously. What motivated you to want to come back? Why did you want to come back to your alma mater, a place where you teach, and take the program over again?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I spoke about that today. Is like there's no other program in the United States that I would have left college football or Wesleyan University for other than Berlin High School. Again, just because I grew up here, I played here, my family played here. We care about football in Berlin. I'm in the school. The kids really pushed, and the alumni pushed for me to come back. And we had a great administration now that are led by Berlin people who really care about Berlin.
Yeah, and that's an important part of it, right? Like you can say that, look, I come from a football town or a football community, but at the end of the day, people have to put their money where their mouth is. That support has to be there.
Mhm.
That not only from the administration, school committee, but from parents. You can get the buy-in from the kids, but as you know, so much of it depends on how much communal buy-in you get as well.
Right. And like they say, college football is you're only as good as your administration. Right. So you got to have the correct administration. You got to have the correct support. You got to have people on board, the alumni, and all that lined up. And it really made a big difference for us as we went through the journey. We had that support that we needed. And we were really, blessed and fortunate to go 13-0, finish top five in the state, and finish with our school's second state championship.
When you look at the way you run your program, what are some core tenets of your philosophy? When you took over the program again last year, when you met with the kids for the first time, what were some non-negotiables in your eyes? What were some things that they needed to do in terms of your philosophy in order to have success?
Well, it's going to be discipline, accountability, student athletes. Those are some of the non-negotiables. We said from the beginning, if you're not going to make a commitment, you're not going to, have discipline and self-discipline. You're not going to be a good student athlete. You're not going to be a successful member of our community. You can pay the $5 and watch us play. And the kids bought into that, and the kids would say it day in and day out. If you're not going to do it, you can go pay the $5 and watch us play. So that was something that we instilled from day one, and it was really that discipline, that structure, that accountability. The student athletes, and really first and foremost, building a good person. And once we built a good person, then we taught that person football, and it panned out for us.
A lot of coaches watch this show, John, and a lot of coaches will tell me that the biggest reason they watch it is it's an opportunity for them to see how other coaches think and what their philosophy is, and to see if they can take an idea or two that they can implement into their program. What would you tell a first year coach, for example, that might have gotten a job recently this offseason? What would be one piece of advice that you would give them as they go into their first season in regards to running a program?
All teams are built in the weight room. I really believe that you have to have your staff in there. The head coach has to be in there. The head coach has to be the hardest working person in the program. I think there has to be accountability at all times. I think you have to, really, really make sure the kids understand that we're going to stay the course, follow the plan, and do not flinch.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? In a world now where people have high expectations, and to a degree, sometimes the expectations can be unrealistic. How important is it to preach patience? Because I think you need time to build a program, right? It's not just going to happen overnight. What you guys did, it's fair to say, both of us have been in the business a long time. What
Yeah.
you guys did isn't the norm usually.
No, no, that was not the norm by no means. And I was real fortunate to have, hire good people. And like they said, you got to get great people, and you got to get them on the bus, and you got to get them in the right seats. And I was able to do that. But I usually say it takes 5 years to build a program, to be honest with you. I really think it takes, 5 years to get in there and, put your staff together, instill the discipline, the accountability, player development, the program planning, all those things that take time. I was really fortunate to have a lot of experience and really know the kids and know the program, and that really gave us an opportunity to have the season we had this year. But no, that is not the norm. You are correct.
Yeah, no, it's not. But I mean, again, it just speaks to how special a season you guys had and what you did this year and how you accomplished it. Speaking of how you accomplished it, the kids. And look, I don't care what anybody says. If you're in this for the right reasons, the number one reason you're in it is for the kids. I know that sometimes that can be
Mhm.
cliche and
No.
people say it's a joke, but at the end of the day, we're all in it for the kids. I ask every coach the same question, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Have kids changed or have times changed? Because a lot of people will tell you they think kids have changed. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think kids have changed. I think a lot of coaching styles at times have to be changed throughout the years. Kids are kids. They're going to follow your lead, right? And whatever you do as a head coach and the things that you put forth in front of them, they're going to follow. We're blessed to have great kids that can be disciplined, that can follow directions, that can do things right. And that was a lot of our successes. We didn't make a lot of mistakes. So I think, kids are kids, like you said, and everything we do, we focus on the kids and the experience. As we were going through the journey, we were 7-0, 8-0, things were going well. And then, I was like, geez, you think maybe we'll have an undefeated season? And then one of my sons who coached with me said, you know what? Nevertheless, they're having a tremendous experience, right? So when the day is done, what are they going to get out of the program? Life skills. For the most part, everybody's going to work. I don't know a lot of people that are going to get paid to play this game. So we really want to focus on developing a student athlete, a good person, and someone who's going to get great life skills when they go out into the working world.
You mentioned you had left Berlin, you went to the college game for 10 years, you're back. Talk to me about the state of Connecticut football. How much has changed since you were away from the high school level, and how much is the same now that you've been back?
Well, we have tremendous high school coaches in Connecticut, guys who really work the game, and a lot of good players come out of the state. And the players that do come out of this state, maybe there's not a ton of them that go to the D1 level, but the ones that do really, really well. So I really am impressed by the coaches that we have in Connecticut, and these guys work their butts off, and we have some top football programs in this state. So I think it's very impressive what we do in this state and do the coaches.
You are watching the Coaches Chat presented by the league. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and this week we're joined by Berlin High School head football coach John Capodice. And coach, you mentioned how much Connecticut, how many good players come out of Connecticut, and for a long time, Connecticut high school football in many ways was the best high school football state in New England. Now some will tell you it's Massachusetts, but I think the difference is Massachusetts is a bigger state. You have a bigger population. You clearly have a bigger pool to pick from. But nonetheless, I saw you in Newport a couple of weeks ago. We chatted. How much can you learn, despite the success you've had? How much can you learn from coaches in other parts of the region, and how much can they learn from you? Because, I mean, there's many different ways to skin a cat, right? But we can really, truly learn from each other in all parts of the country when it comes to football, but especially in our own regions.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this game so unique is there's always something to learn. When you go to those clinics, there are top-notch coaches and top-notch speakers, and if you think you know everything in this game, you're done. There's always something to learn. There's so many great coaches to learn from. So I mean, I'm always trying to work the game. I'm always calling coaches. This year I probably spoke to 10 to 12 probably different high school coaches in the state. As I went through the journey, say, hey, what are you guys are doing? I haven't done this for a while, but what are you guys doing right now? And how are you prepping for the playoffs and things like that? And I was fortunate to have so many good friends that are great coaches and gave input, that helped my journey back.
Speaking of your journey back, obviously, again, to go back to the point that I made earlier, you spent 10 years at Wesleyan. You talked about installing new system on offense, new system on defense. We don't get into the X's and O's here in the coaches chat, but I do like to talk about philosophy. What is your offensive and defensive philosophy in terms of how you want to play the game?
Yeah, well, we want to run, block, and tackle better than the other team, and that's a big part of our philosophy, and that's built into our practice plans every day. We're going to run, block, and tackle. Offensively, we want to control the ball. We want to keep our defense off the field. We want to run the ball. We want to stop the run. I know those are cliches, but that's what you have to do. If you're going to play football in December in Connecticut, I think we finished December 13th. You got to be able to run the ball, and you got to be able to stop the run because the weather is going to be the weather. I think it's hard when you get deep into the season and into December to be throwing that ball all around based on the elements. I think it's tough to do. So that's our philosophy: is we're gonna run the ball, we're gonna stop the run, we're gonna be physical, we're gonna control the clock, and we're gonna limit our mistakes and play real good, disciplined football.
Former Cranston West High School head football coach Steve Storr, man, that I've known for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Coach Capodice, you know Coach Storr as
Yes, I
well.
do. A big New England guy. Yep.
Yep, big New England guy, URI football legend, played at URI. Says you can always learn, John. Absolutely, and you're talking to two John, so we both agree with you. Coach Storr goes on to say, always trying to learn something from every coach I worked with, and that's the name of the game, right? And Coach Storr, always great to hear from you, my friend. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate it. That's the name of the game, right? Because that's why people ask me all the time. They're like, why do you think coaches still go to clinics? You're around the game, you talk to different coaches. Why do you think coaches still go to clinics? And I always come back to the same thing, which is you can go to one clinic and pick up one thing, and you can bring that one thing with you back to your school. That can help your program. Now, is it going to be the difference between you winning and losing a championship? Probably not, but you never know. It's those one or two things you pick up that you learn from someone else that can make you a better coach and help your program.
Tremendously. I mean, the speakers that they bring to the big New England, for example, Bob Chestney's been there for year after year after year. He's at UCLA now. So, I mean, these are Dante Scarnecchia from the Patriots. You can go right down the line. Liam Cohen was there last year. I mean, the guys they bring in are top notch, and you get to pick their brains. And, Keith and Terry do a tremendous job with that clinic year in, year out. I think I've been on the board now for 15 years, and there's always something to learn, and it's also networking. You're really networking with so many great coaches throughout the weekend, and if you think you know it all, you're way off base. Always
Yeah.
something to learn.
Yeah, there always is something to learn. Now, I am going to ask you the universal coaches question, which we always ask each other at clinics, which is how are you going to be next year? But moving on now, and when you build a championship program, you enjoy it for a period of time, and then the focus shifts, and you start to think about next season. I'm not going to. You don't have to tell me how you think you're going to be next year. We don't need any predictions here, but how have you made that move now to where the focus has shifted? Last year was great. We've got memories. We're going to get rings, but now it's all about 2026. How have you been able to move forward to next season?
Yeah, we're back at it. I mean, we're back in the weight room. Our staff's back together. We're preparing for 2026. We're going to follow the recipes that we put forth last year because we had a lot of success with those recipes. We really laid the foundation. So, how many games we're going to win, I don't know, but I know we're going to play really hard and we're going to compete our butts off. We have a great group of kids, and our goal is to go 1-0 every week. But nevertheless, how many wins we're going to get, unpredictable. But the kids will show up, they'll work hard, they'll compete, and we have a great program. We're really fortunate.
Obviously, you bring back enough experience from a championship team that you'll be able to lean on those guys that played a pivotal role in you winning a state title. But as always, you also have to replace some key contributors that played a big part in that. What is the current state of affairs with your younger groups? Do you expect to have young guys step up and fill some of those voids that you're going to need to fill from your departing seniors?
Yeah, I think the next group of kids are excited to fill in and become varsity players and play on Friday night. Like I tell them, all positions are open, so everybody's going to compete. The best players will play. we really give them every opportunity, to win a position. But when the day is done, it's varsity football. It's the highest level of football that we provide, and the best players will play to give us the best opportunity to compete. And I think the kids understand that.
And of course, one of the things that there's a lot that I love about Connecticut high school football. I've been a big fan of it for a long time. That's why we've made such a commitment to covering Connecticut high school football in New England Football Journal. But one of the things that I love about Connecticut high school football now, besides your playoff format and the way you guys run your end of the season, which is, I think, so much better than what we do here in Massachusetts. But one of the things I love is that the alliance and the scheduling of games,
Mm.
and having that in place where teams you play good competition throughout the course of the season. What are your thoughts on the alliance, and what do you think it brings to Connecticut high school football?
The alliance is brand new. As when I was, in the high school level, the first time around, there was no alliance. So this is the first time, I'm involved with it and exploring with it. And it seems like they really try to get, great matchups for teams on a weekly basis outside of your conference. So, I'm still learning about the alliance and how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a process, right? I mean, like you said, it's new. It's only been around a couple of years. It's a process. More and more schools are participating in it, but it is something that I think can potentially be a model for other states to follow in terms of scheduling. Because, as you know, John, one of the hardest things to do, especially when you're a good program, is find games.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's something new, and it's a matter of each state deciding what's best for them, and how can alliance maybe be implemented for their states. I know our alliance has reached out to Rhode Island now, so it seems like there's already been growth. But again, I'm just learning about it. It's my second year being involved with it, and it seems like it really tries to match up teams and get great games, on a weekly basis, and teams outside your league.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that conversation starts happening here. I know that part of the reason it's happened in Rhode Island is because Bishop Hendricken, who played Killingly last year, they've been willing the last couple years to play Connecticut teams, and again, I think we're living in a time now where if you're a good program, it's going to get harder and harder to schedule games. Unfortunately, it's the sad reality of the way things are nowadays, but that is the way it works. What do you love about coaching, John? What is one thing that keeps you going, that you look forward to every day, every season when it comes to being a coach?
Well, it's the relationships and being around the kids. When you're a PE teacher in the high school, every single day you get to see these kids. Throughout the day, you build relationships with them, and then you get a chance to, in the afternoon, see them compete and be in a different light than the way things are during the day. So truly, it's about being in the school, being a part of the school community, being around the kids, developing the student athletes, and then spending time with them, after school, teaching them the great game of football and all the life skills that go into it.
Absolutely. And that is ultimately the best part of it, right? The relationship piece, whether it be the camaraderie with your coaches, the relationship with the kids. One of the things after 32 years of coaching football that I have found rewarding is seeing the former players and reminiscing with them and talking about their teams, and then they love to get into comparing their teams versus other teams, and how do you think we would do against this year's team, and blah
Right.
blah blah. So that's truly to your point, John. The relationships ultimately, that's what has a lasting impact on you as a coach.
Yeah, no doubt, and that's the biggest thing too. Is, as you mentioned too, all your previous teams, the guys come back, and the longer you coach and the more you go on, you get older and you age, and then those kids become young adults and they go into the working world, and then they share what they gained from the program, and that's important. It's almost like when you're a kid, 16, 17, 18 year olds, you don't want to listen to your parents, and then mature, you get older, and you look back and you go, you know what, they were right. And that's the one same thing you want, for our coaches. Sometimes for the kids, it doesn't always make sense, but then they look back, they mature, and they say, you know what, our coaches cared and they were right. And I think that's important.
No, I think I agree with you. I think it's vitally important, and I think at the end of the day, when they come back, it says that they loved playing for you. They may not have agreed with everything, but they liked playing for you, and I think that the name of the game. Now, of course, you guys finished the Class M state champions. Have you guys had your banquet yet? Have you done your ring ceremony yet? Where are you guys with that stuff?
We got everything. We've had the banquet. The rings are here. We've had all of our celebrations. The banners up in the gym. So we've made the the celebration trail, and now we're on to 2026. But I'm really going to miss those kids. Those seniors were amazing, and the journey was tremendous. Our coaches were incredible. And to finish, with a state championship, and when you win that last game, you go back into the locker room, and everybody's happy. It's very, very hard to win that last game. It's an experience that I hope everyone gets because it's very, very unique.
One of the advantages that I think you have is you're in the building. And we're also living in a time now, John, where a lot of districts are not making that commitment anymore to football coaches, getting them into the school. And I think that that's ridiculous. I've been very outspoken about it. You have the largest roster of any sport in the department. If there's one sport where the coach should be in the building, it's football. What is the benefit to you being there on a day-to-day basis with the kids?
Right, it's non-negotiable. The head football coach has to be in the building. You look at all the programs that are successful, I would probably say 99% of them, the head football coach is in the building. And the reason is the kids have to see me. I have to see them on a daily basis. I have to check in with them throughout the day, make sure they're on point, they're behaving, they're doing schoolwork, make sure we're communicating with the teachers. I don't think there's any other way to do it, to be honest with you, if you're going to have a top-notch football program, is the head football coach has to be in the building.
Yeah, because for every program that has success without the coach in the building, you could probably point to 5 examples or more, probably more, where the program is struggling because the coach isn't there. And you know what? You need to have the coach here to build a championship culture. And it goes back to that relationship piece, right? Like you talked about. That's how you build. Not that you don't build a relationship with the kids if you're not there. You do. I just think it's a different kind of a relationship when the coach is in the building. What are your thoughts on we're living again, here I am talking about the times we're living in, but we are living in a time of specialization now and kids playing one sport. You're seeing it across the board where numbers are down in sports now. I think a couple of years ago the prevailing thought was that it was a football problem, but I think it's a sports problem now. How do you think we can alleviate that in terms of making our sports, specifically our game of football, more appealing for kids?
That's a tough one. I think you really need to have a youth program with vertical alignment, right? So the
Yeah.
youth program and the high school program is connected. I believe the head football coach needs to be on the youth board, so you're connected and you're installing the same, very similar offense, defense, practice plans. And it's also safer because the high school coaches are certified. A lot of them are great, great coaches, so they can go down there and instruct and make sure everyone's doing things correctly. So that would be my advice. If you're the head football coach, is to get down, be a part of your youth program, get on the board, and create that vertical alignment, from your youth to your high school.
Yeah, I think that's so vitally important. I mean, you hear stories from different communities where, the Pop Warner's running one offense, one defense, and the high school's running something else. And to your point about vertical alignment, it starts there. You need to be on the same page. If you're not, it's hard to build that consistency. And I think you bring up an interesting point too with the head coach being on the board. I don't hear that often from people, but I think it's vitally important in terms of the relationship piece.
Right, and also being a part of the community. I started our flag football program in 2004 in our town, and I'm down there on Saturday mornings with our varsity players, and we're working with the kindergartners, for example. I had to laugh. This year on Saturdays, I was down tying shoes for kindergartners in flag football, where I used to be getting ready for a Wesleyan football game. But that's what you have to do. You got to be down there. You got to be in the community. You got to be with the youth program, the flag program. You got to be a part of the board. And if you're going to do it right, you got to put the time and effort in. And if you're not going to go all in and go 100 miles an hour, then it's going to be very hard to have success.
All right, Coach, final question here for you. What's on tap for the rest of the offseason for the Redcoats? What do you guys have coming up?
Oh, again, like I said, our staff is together and ready to go. The kids are back in the weight room, so we're engaged with them, and that will roll into our summer plans and our team camp, and then before you know it, we're back August 17th, which I call it's go time, and we're gonna lock in, compete. We got a challenging schedule coming up, and we'll work our butts off and do the best we can.
Care to share a couple of guys for our viewers that we should be looking forward to seeing for the Redcoats this year that are either returning guys or you expect to step up?
I mean, I think we have a bunch of guys back. Jador Dixon and Cam Lavoy and Ryder Dowling. They all started last year, and Braden Kelly as sophomores, Brandon Sadowski, Nick Balicki. Those are some of the sophomores that started. So I think we have a handful of starters coming back, but there'll be a lot of positions open, and I think a lot of kids are excited about the opportunity to fill the void of the guys that we left and become varsity players and play on Friday night.
Coach Capodice, I want to say thank you for taking the time, my friend. It's great to talk football with you. It's great to catch up with you a couple of weeks ago. Thank you for taking the time. Congratulations again on winning the Class M state title. And as always, if there's anything we could ever do here in New England Football Journal, please feel free to reach out. We're always here to help football in our region.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys do a tremendous job. You really promote the game, and we're very very thankful for being on the show tonight. And anything we can do to help at Berlin, always feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Awesome. We will definitely do that. That is John Capodice, head football coach at Berlin High School. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Coaches Chat. For Coach Capodice, I'm John Tierney. Until next time, peace.